My greetings and salutations to all. I am Professor Dr. Namita Rajput, Professor in Department of Commerce, Sri Aurobindo College, University of Delhi. In the ongoing series of Art of Being Happy, today we will be talking on interpersonal relationship, and in this context we will be covering the influence of religion and spirituality on relationship. Yes, we are talking about a parent-child relationship in diverse cultural context. Also about the traditional versus modern societies and how the cross-cultural intercultural relationship and the challenges, and lastly about the emotional expressiveness and display rules in the different cultures. So let us start with the influence of religion and spirituality on relationships. The religion and spirituality, they have a profound influence on interpersonal relationships, shaping how individuals connect with others, the value they prioritize, and the behavior they exhibit within their relationships. The impact of religion and spirituality on the relationships can actually vary widely depending on a specific belief, practices, and the cultural context of the individuals involved. The first is your shared values and beliefs. When individuals share the same religious or the spiritual beliefs, it can actually create a very strong sense of common ground and the shared values. And this shared foundation can serve as a strong bonding factor in the relationship, providing a sense of meaning and the purpose that extends beyond the individuals themselves. The second is your moral and ethical guidelines. Many religious and spiritual traditions, they actually provide specific moral and ethical guidelines for the adherents to follow. Now, these guidelines can actually shape how individuals behave within their relationships, promoting the virtues such as compassion, forgiveness, and altruism. The third is your rituals and traditions. The religious and spiritual rituals, they often play a very significant role in interpersonal relationships. The rituals such as wedding ceremonies, the family gatherings, they can serve to strengthen the social bonds and reinforce a sense of community. The next is your support systems. The religious and spiritual communities can act as a valuable support systems for the individuals in their relationships. These communities may provide emotional, practical, and spiritual support during the difficult times or major life events. The next is your role of prayer and meditation. The prayer, meditation, and other forms of spiritual practices can enhance the emotional intimacy and communication within the relationships. Now, these practices may also serve as a source of comfort and the stress relief for the individuals and the couples. Next we have is a conflict resolution. Religion and spirituality can play a significant role in conflict resolution within the relationship. For some, religious teachings may emphasize the forgiveness and reconciliation as essential aspects of resolving conflicts. Let us move on to a very interesting part, that is a parent-child relationship in diverse cultural context. The different cultural contexts have quite different parent-child relationships, which reflects the distinctive values, conventions, and practices of each civilization. The cultural views on parenting, the place of children in the family, and the broader societal expectations, they all have a significant impact on how parents interact with and nurture their children. The key elements of a parent-child relationship in many cultural contexts include the following. The first is your parenting style. The different cultures, they may exhibit the various parenting styles such as authoritarianism, permissive or authoritative, the cultural norms and beliefs, they influence the degree of the parental control, warmth and involvement in the child's life. The second is your independence versus interdependence. The cultural norms also influence the balance between promoting the independence and fostering the interdependence within the parent-child relationships. Some cultures, they prioritize the individual autonomy, while others emphasize the family cohesion and intergenerational support. The next is your parental authority. The extent of parental authority and decision making, the power varies across the cultures. In some societies, parents have significant authority over their children's life, while in others, decisions are made collectively within the family. Next we have is the education and achievement. The cultural values related to education and achievement, they influence the parenting practices. Some cultures place a strong emphasis on academic success and achievement, while others, they prioritize the other forms of development such as moral character or the physical skills. Next we have is the emotional expression. The expression of emotions and affection between the parents and the children can be influenced by the cultural norms. Some cultures encourage the open emotional expression, while others may emphasize emotional restraint. Next is your gender roles. The parent-child relationship can be shaped by the cultural expectations around the gender roles. For instance, certain cultures may have a different expectations for mothers and the fathers in their role as parents. Next we have is the initiation into adulthood. The different cultures have a distinct ritual and ceremonies to mark the transition from childhood to adulthood. Now these rites of passage can influence the parent-child relationship during this critical state of development. It's critical to understand that there is a substantial variability within the cultural context, and these are general patterns. Additionally, the parent-child relationship are being impacted by globalization and the cultural exchange, which is changing conventionally the traditions in the many communities. Now, promoting the cross-cultural understanding and a good parenting practices in a multicultural society requires a deep understanding of the respect for the many cultural perspective on the parent-child relationships. Now moving on to another interesting part, that is interpersonal relationship in traditional and the modern societies. Now due to different cultures, the social and the technological elements, the interpersonal relationship in traditional and the modern societies can show a notable variances. While the modern civilizations, they encounter a rapid technical breakthrough, increased globalization and the changing social norms, traditional societies often adhere to a long-standing conventions, practices and social structure. Now in the ancient and contemporary societies, the interpersonal connections differ significantly in the following ways. The first is your traditional societies. The collective well-being and the group cohesion, they are frequently given top priority in traditional communities. With strong ties to the local community and extended family, the relationships have a tendency to be more interdependent. Next we have is a gender role and expectations. They are frequently more rigid in traditional societies with a clear responsibilities for men and women in the home, the workplace and community. Next we have is a limited communication channels. Because the oral and face-to-face interactions are more common in traditional countries, new communication technology may not be as widely used. Next is your conservative values. The conservative attitude toward the relationship, sexuality, and social interactions may be upheld in traditional societies. These attitudes may have an impact on societal norms and behavior. The first is your traditional civilizations. They play a significant focus on maintaining the cultural traditions and keeping up with the old customs, which can have an impact on the social standards and interpersonal interactions. Next we have is the contemporary or a modern society. Now, individualism and autonomy. The contemporary civilizations, they frequently place a strong emphasis on the personal freedom and autonomy. The personal preferences and the common interest are likely to be constituting the foundation of the relationships. Next is your modern civilizations. They are observing a transition in the gender roles towards a more egalitarian ones, with more chances for women empowerment and better gender equality. Next we have is a digital communication. The long distance relationship, online dating and social networking are actually made it possible by the modern civilizations with the use of sophisticated communicable technologies. Next is your liberal values. The contemporary societies might hold more liberal values on dating, marriage, sexuality, promoting greater acceptance and diversity. Next we have is a modern civilization. Modern civilization play a very strong emphasis on the personal fulfillment and happiness, which can have an impact on the dynamics of relationship and expectations. Traditional and modern aspects, they coexist in communities, reflecting the complex interplay of traditions, modernity, and the personal preferences. The understanding these differences can actually increase the cross-cultural sensitivity and understanding in an increasingly interconnected world. Next we have is a cross-cultural or intercultural relationships and the challenges. People from various cultural origins who come together in love relationships or friendships are said to be in cross-cultural and intercultural relationships. These interactions can be very interesting and satisfying, but because of the cultural viewpoints, the communication methods involved, they can actually present some special difficulties. Now, following are some of the typical difficulties encountered in cross-cultural and intercultural relationships, out of which the first is the communication barriers. Disparities in communication methods, the non-verbal cues and the languages. They can cause the couple of misunderstand and misinterpret one another. The next is your family expectations. The family expectation and the cultural norms related to relationship and the marriage can influence the couple's decision and may cause a tension if they conflict with each other's desires. Next we have is a social acceptance. The cross-cultural relationships may face a social scrutiny or disapproval from the family members, friends or communities that uphold the traditional cultural norms. Next is your conflict resolution. The different cultural norms regarding the conflict resolution and expressing the emotions, they may create the difficulties in resolving the disagreements. Next we have is the identity and belonging. People in cross-cultural partnerships, they may struggle with these difficulties, especially if they feel conflicted between their cultural history and the new cultural settings. Next we have is the identity and identity formation. Individuals in cross-cultural relationships, they may grapple with questions of identity and how they navigate and integrate their cultural backgrounds. Now, addressing these challenges, it requires the open communication, empathy, and the cultural sensitivity from both partners. Here are some strategies to help navigate the cross-cultural, intercultural relationship, out of which the first is the active listening. Pay attention to each other's perspectives, beliefs, and feelings, and be open to understanding and learning from each other cultural backgrounds. Next we have is a cultural learning. Learn about each other's cultural norms, traditions, and the values to foster the mutual understanding and appreciation. Next we have is a communication about the expectations. Discuss and negotiate your expectations regarding relationship roles, family involvement, and the cultural practices. Next is your embrace the differences. Embrace and celebrate the diversity that each partner brings to the relationship, recognizing it as a source of enrichment. Next we have is a seek support. Reach out to cross-cultural support groups or the counselors who can actually offer the guidance and understanding. The cross-cultural, intercultural relationships, they require the effort, the patience, and understanding to navigate the challenges and foster a strong and resilient bond between the partners. When both individuals are committed to appreciating each other's culture backgrounds, promoting a mutual growth, these relationships can actually provide unique opportunities for the personal growth and deeper understanding of human diversity. Next we have is a emotional expressiveness and display the rules in the different cultures. The expression and control of emotions in the social context, they vary greatly across the individuals and across the cultures. This concept is known as emotional expressiveness and display of norms. The people's attitude on expressing their feelings openly depend greatly on the cultural norms and the social expectations. Now these guidelines, they actually specify which feelings are acceptable to express, when and how they should be conveyed, and to whom. So here are some significant cultural variations in emotional expression and exhibition norms. The first is open versus restrained expression. Now some cultures encourage open and direct emotional expressions, where individuals, they freely express their feelings, both positive and negative. In contrast, other cultures may value emotional restraint, encouraging individuals to control and suppress their emotion, especially in the public settings. The next we have is a facial expression and the gestures. The cultural differences can be expressed in interpretation and the use of the facial expression and gestures to actually convey the emotions. While certain emotions may be universally recognizable, their interpretation and intensity may vary across the culture. Next we have is the collectivist versus individualistic cultures. In the collectivist cultures, emotional expression may be more communal and oriented towards maintaining a group harmony, while individualist cultures may prioritize the expression of the personal emotions. Next we have is a public versus private display of emotions. The display rules. In some cultures, they emphasize the need to maintain the emotional exposure in the public settings, while the private context, such as the family or close friends, they may allow for more emotional expression. Next we have is a gender and emotional expression. The cultural norms, they often dictate the specific emotional display based on gender. For example, some cultures may encourage men to express the anger and the pride while discouraging them from showing the vulnerability or sadness. Next we have is a gender and emotional expression. The cultural norms, they often dictate specific emotional displays based on the gender. For example, some cultures may encourage men to express the anger or pride while discouraging them from showing the vulnerability or the sadness. Next we have is a emotional release versus emotional suppression. Now coming on to this, people who live in the cultures that value emotional restraint may choose to suppress their feeling inside in order to avoid making the public display. As a way of processing and coping with the feelings, the emotional release and the catharsis may be encouraged in the various cultures. Now it is very crucial to understand that the cultural expectations about the emotional expressiveness are not absolute or permanent, as that people within a society may display different emotional expressions depending on their personalities and also the experiences. Now, being aware of these distinctions, it might help people to communicate effectively and emphasize with others in multicultural settings. Because the cross-cultural encounters can result in misunderstandings and misinterpretation of the emotions. So basically we have to take into considerations the following aspects and the guidelines to actually specify which feelings are acceptable to express and when and how they should be conveyed and to whom. So we have talked about the open versus the restrained expressions. Because some cultures they offer open expression of your feelings and some cultures they offer the depressive feelings to keep the feelings inside. So they are not allowed to do a public display of either the affection or the sadness. So basically they suppress their feelings inside, owing to which they face anxiety sometimes. But some certain cultures are very open in which they are allowed to have a public display of their feelings, both the positive feeling and the negative feeling. And this kind is actually more highlighted in the different cultures differently. Some people have some kind of a cultural differences which can be observed in the interpretation using of the facial expression and the gestures. And also about the collectivist and the individualistic cultures. Sometimes in the collectivist cultures, the emotion expressions may be more communal and oriented towards maintaining a group harmony, while individualistic culture, they actually prioritize the individual's emotions. So they are not bothered about the society at large. And also about the display rules across the cultures, they are different. And as a family, as a friend, they are allowed to have the expression, whereas in the individualistic part, it is not allowed. So we can say the cultural norms often dictate specific emotional displays based on the gender, and the emotional expression also is expressed in the different cultures differently in terms of male and female, showing the vulnerability and also the sadness. So we have to take care of the different cultures and embrace the diversity in this regard so as to celebrate the diversity and also keep up the interpersonal relationships. Thank you very much.